Hello and welcome to my channel. This video is an unsolicited update on the TV show Riverdale. This crazy ride is almost coming to an end. We're well into season 5, so I thought it would be fun to just catch up with the gang. Anyway, just a quick time jump update. We're now 7 years into the future. Archie was in the military and he got some kind of honorable discharge and he went back to Riverdale. The ghoulies had turned his home into some kind of jingle jangle trap house, but he eventually gets his home back. Basically, jingle jangle is a drug that everyone was on in Riverdale. Betty was at Quantico training to be an FBI officer, but there was an incident with the trashbag killer, TBK, and she herself ends up getting captured for 2 weeks. She's been put on desk duty solving cold cases, which she hates, but she has been having nightmares, presumably from the PTSD from that failed attempt at trying to catch him and then getting captured herself. Veronica is married now, and she used to work on Wall Street, but I guess her husband was jealous or something, so she quit. She lies and says she works somewhere, but turns out she works at some kind of shady jewelry store. He's not happy about it, and she ends up going back to Riverdale. Jughead's a writer who's written one successful novel, but now he's broke, he's in debt, his agent keeps calling him for a manuscript, he drinks a lot, and he also has writer's block. Archie texts them all and they all head back to Riverdale to celebrate Pop's retirement. When they get there, they find out that Hiram Lodge has basically been trying to strip the whole town for parts. He's funding a wealthy new suburb and he's been poaching teachers from Riverdale High. Now the school doesn't really have many teachers, they don't have funding, and it's on the brink of closing down. So the gang ends up getting a hefty donation from Cheryl, and they all decide to stay in Riverdale High, at least for now, and become teachers, including Tony. So the main plot is basically the gang is trying to get Riverdale back. So now for the subplots. So first we have the love triangle subplot. Betty and Archie have been in this friends with benefits situation, and they had some really good chemistry actually. I was on board with it, but it turns out that Archie still has feelings for Veronica, and this all comes to a head when Cheryl hosts a key party where everyone needs to pick a key out of a bowl and they pair off and do consensual sex stuff with that person. Reggie ends up pairing off with Fangs, Kevin's fiance. Veronica ends up being paired with Archie, but her husband isn't having it, and so they end up going home. Betty gets paired with Archie and they end up deciding to just be friends because Archie tells Betty that he still has feelings for Veronica. Anyway, Veronica and Archie end up getting together after she tells him that her and Chad, her husband, are getting a divorce. They were so uncommitted to this love triangle, but I feel like they're trying to live up to Veronica's Archie we're endgame speech a few seasons ago. So yeah, like it's strange because you can kind of tell that Archie and Betty really do like each other, even though it's as friends, and they have really great chemistry, but with Veronica, it never quite fit. So I mean, interesting choice, but sure. Next we have a fire department subplot. So Hiram is suspected of trying to burn down Archie's house, yes, with him in it, and that makes him realize that there's no fire department in Riverdale because Hiram firebombed the fire department, and there's a suspected arsonist who's been setting fires randomly throughout town trying to get people to leave, I guess. Anyway, Archie ends up making a makeshift fire department with some kids in his class, but that turns out to be a bust because he ends up running into a burning building alone, and Principal Weatherby, thank goodness he's still there, shuts the whole thing down. Archie does, however, manage to get some volunteers together who are of age. Kevin is one of them, and the old fire department chief ends up volunteering his time. Veronica buys them a fire truck, so things end well on that front. So Archie is a teacher, head of the fire department, and he's also building Veronica's new villa, I guess. Okay, sure. Reggie is now one of Hiram's goons, and they basically just plot ways to destroy Riverdale together. We got that really good scene of Hiram plotting to shut down Riverdale High while he was eating Doritos. Anyway, so there is a swamp where dead bodies keep on popping up, and this swamp just happens to be on Hiram's property. We'll get to the swamp in a minute. Anyway, at first I kind of thought that Hiram had some shady business with the dead bodies, but he does eventually let the FBI search his property after all. There's this little side story about Veronica printing her own money to try and boost Riverdale's economy. I don't know what to say about this storyline. I'm sure there's some legit economics involved. Anyway, one of the bigger subplots is the Mothman. the mystery or the legend of the Mothman. So as we know, Jug is broke. He's an English teacher by day, and he moonlights as a waiter at Pops. Pops' granddaughter, who now runs Pops, offers to give him a job, and they're both actually trying to figure out the mystery of the Mothman. So Jughead speaks to a witness who says that about 30 or 40 years ago, the Mothman took some miners up into his spaceship and switched them around, like their bodies around or something, but all of the other guys have since died. But Pops was a witness to an event that happened as well, and Pops tells Tabitha, his granddaughter, and Jughead he was working in the diner and there was a sudden electricity in the air and the lights started to flicker. There was also this great light that came from outside, and they all went outside, but after a while the light went away and it was just a normal evening. And he says that someone else was there who they can talk to, Cheryl's gran. So Tabitha and Jug head over to Cheryl's gran. She tells them a little bit more about the Mothman, and she says that the Mothman didn't want others knowing this, but she found a Mothman corpse. I guess she said that she cremated this body, but she actually lied, and she preserved this body in a barrel of maple syrup, which she offers to give to Jug and Tabitha. Yeah, it's pretty gross. So anyway, they decide to call an anthropologist to come in and check the specimen out, but when the anthropologist comes in the next day, the specimen is gone. Turns out Jug had experienced the exact same thing as Pops, and he knows that he passed out and lost a few hours. So the lady tells Jug that she could help him find out whether he might have been abducted or if he's just experiencing some resurfaced trauma. Obviously I smell a cult, but Jug goes to the support group and it might be legit. The group doesn't really go well for him though, because he doesn't want to share this with a bunch of people, but at the same time, like, he's still seeing things. It's pretty scary. Anyway, the mystery of Jug's possible abduction and the Mothman continues. Next, on to Tony and Cheryl. So Cheryl spends 8 years at Thornhill, kind of being like this lady of the manor, and she doesn't really go into the town. She believed that she was cursed, and she sells paintings of Jason, her dead twin brother, I guess. Eventually she decides to rejoin society because one of her spies at Riverdale High tells her that Tony is revamping the Vixens, the cheerleader squad. Cheryl gets really territorial because she believes that the Vixens are hers, and yeah, we get to watch this absurd dance off. Eventually Cheryl and Tony agree to share the Vixens. It's also revealed that Tony is actually having a baby with Fangs and Kevin, and they'll all live together and raise the baby together. Cheryl is heartbroken about this, but she decides to make a sanctuary at the mansion for Tony's kid, which she says is quote-unquote our kid. And Tony is pretty weirded out, and in general she seems to have outgrown Cheryl, who's still quite immature and territorial. It's kind of sad to see what became of Cheryl's character. It's like they can't really commit to her being a villain, so she's just a spoiled rich woman who kind of schemes, I guess. Fang and Kevin are having issues. Kevin isn't ready to get married. Fangs is pretty upset because Kevin was the one who wanted a family. I guess we'll see what happens with that. So one of the main subplots is that Polly, Betty's sister, goes missing, and the last we see of her is that she's running down the highway and there is a truck seemingly chasing her. Not to worry though, Betty is on the case. And I don't mean that in a snarky way. Betty, Alice and Kevin go to the swamp and they end up finding a bunch of dead bodies and Polly's cell phone at some point. I should also mention that Polly kind of got into a bad crowd. We saw her hanging out with the ghoulies, and she might have been mixed up in Jingle Jangle. Anyway, altogether, it turns out that there are 21 young women that have gone missing over the years, and Betty is convinced that there's a serial killer on the loose. We also get a couple of scenes with Dr. Curdle Jr., who's trying to figure out who these bodies belong to. I don't know why. I love this doctor. He's such a Riverdale character. Like, it's hilarious. Anyway, the end of the last episode, we end with Polly calling the house and Betty answers. Polly is really stressed out. She says that she ran away as fast as she could and that she's on the lonely highway. So Betty and Alice drive out to go and pick her up, but all they see is a trashed and bloody phone booth. So the mystery of Polly's disappearance continues, and that's basically everything you need to know about season 5 of Riverdale. I'll likely do another video after the season finale just to kind of see what eventually happened. Please feel free to like this video, and if you like this kind of content, subscribe. Thank you for watching.